I'm Maureen. Standing on the sidewalk outside the opulent hotel, the warm night air and the gentle harbor wind caress my face. I take a deep breath, a breath I've been holding for far too long. Caleb stands beside me, steady and silent. Just a few minutes ago, we walked out of my sister's engagement party, leaving behind a room full of shocked faces and a shattered family facade. My family has always been one of those high society clans in Boston. My father, Henry Thompson, is a big-shot real estate developer. His company, Thompson Realty Ventures, is responsible for some of the most luxurious high-rises and commercial buildings in the city. He's a man who values status, money, and power above all else. My mother, Elizabeth Thompson, is a socialite. She spends her days chairing charity events and rubbing shoulders with the city's elite. Every handshake is a strategic move in her social game. My sister, Lily, is 2 years older than me. In my parents' eyes, she's the golden child. By the age of 32, she's already a vice president at my father's company. She has a knack for numbers and a charm that can win over any investor. She's the embodiment of my parents' idea of success. Then there's me. I teach art at a public high school on the south side of the city. I make $55,000 a year, and often dip into my own pocket to buy art supplies for my students when the school budget runs dry. I spend my days trying to inspire teenagers who have been written off by society, showing them that they can create beauty with their own hands. But to my parents, my job is just a nice little hobby. The favoritism in our family was always subtle but cruel. At family dinners, my father would talk to Lily about business strategies and market trends, while he'd ask me if schools still had summer vacations, as if my job was no more than babysitting. When I won a city-wide art competition for my students, my mother responded to my excited text with a simple thumbs up hours later. But when Lily was featured in a business magazine as one of the city's rising stars, my mother threw a lavish dinner party with over 50 guests, printed menus, and a professional photographer. I remember the day I truly realized how embarrassed they were of me. It was when I was 24. My school held an art exhibition for the students in a converted warehouse downtown. Some of my students had never seen their work framed before. One of them cried when she saw her painting under the gallery lights. I sent my parents the invitation a month in advance. My father replied the morning of the event, saying he had an important client meeting. My mother didn't even bother to answer. That night, while I was helping my students hang their art, Lily posted pictures of herself at the opening of one of my father's new luxury condos. There they were, looking perfect on the rooftop, while I was in the background of my own life. I met Ethan at a farmer's market on a sweltering July day. I had driven there alone because one of my students' grandfathers sold homemade jams. Ethan was standing behind a table filled with fresh produce, honey, and hand-painted signs. He wore well-worn jeans, boots caked with dirt, and a faded blue work shirt. There was a small scar on his cheek, and a tan line where his watch usually sat. When an old lady asked if the strawberries were sweet, he answered her with such patience. When a little boy dropped a basket of apples, Ethan picked them up and replaced them with better ones. I was immediately drawn to his kindness. We started talking when I asked about the difference between the seconds and the regular produce. He gave me a detailed answer, not the short, dismissive one most people give. We ended up chatting for half an hour about farming, food waste, and the way people romanticize farmers but don't respect their work. Before I left, he asked for my number on a scrap of paper, and I gave it to him. Ethan was nothing like the men my parents approved of. He drove an old pickup truck with a dented fender. He hated small talk and loved classic rock. His hands were rough from hard work. On our third date, he told me he had no interest in dressing up in a suit just to impress others. On our fifth date, he took me to his farm to watch the sunset over the fields. I had dated men who only talked about being good, but Ethan was truly a good man. He listened to me, remembered the little things, and never once belittled my job. But my parents hated him from the start. They saw him as a country bumpkin, someone unsophisticated and temporary. My father asked him one day if he had any real plans for the future, as if Ethan's family's generations-old farm wasn't a stable enough occupation. My mother was more subtle, saying, "Maureen, dear, he seems nice, but are you sure you're not settling?" Ethan was private, and people often misjudged him because of his humble appearance. Once at a charity dinner my mother dragged me to, a businessman dismissed farming as an unprofitable industry. Ethan simply asked him where he thought his fancy restaurant sourced its fresh produce. Another time, when my father mocked Ethan's truck, Ethan just smiled and said, "It gets me where I need to go." My family mistook his quiet confidence for inferiority. Lily's engagement party was held at the top-floor penthouse of the Ritz-Carlton. The room was filled with white roses, crystal chandeliers, and the soft sound of a string quartet. There were over 70 guests, all dressed in their finest. Lily looked stunning in a white silk gown, and her fiancé, Alexander, was charming as he greeted the guests. Alexander's father, Robert, was a well-known hotelier in the city. Ethan and I were seated near the service entrance, far from the main table. My mother came over and said, "I hope you understand, Maureen." There were so many important guests, and the seating was a challenge. I wanted to laugh at the irony. As if my presence was only valuable when it could enhance their social status. Ethan squeezed my knee under the table and asked if I wanted to leave. I said no, still holding on to a sliver of hope that they might surprise me. After dinner, my father stood up and tapped his glass. He praised Lily for her intelligence, ambition, and business acumen. He called her the pride of the family. Then he turned to me and said, "And Maureen, still in love with that poor farmer?" Some people laughed, thinking it was a harmless joke. But I knew it was a deliberate attempt to humiliate me. Just then, Robert stood up so suddenly that his chair fell back. He stared at Ethan as if he had seen a ghost. "Wait, that's you?" he said loudly. The music stopped. My father's face turned pale, and my mother's eyes widened. Lily gripped her glass so tightly that I thought it might break. Robert walked over to Ethan and said, "Ethan Miller? You're the man behind Miller Agri Investments. Your company saved my hotel chain during the economic downturn. You've been funding sustainable farming initiatives across the state. Half the business community in this city has been trying to get in touch with you for years." My father's face went blank. He looked at Ethan as if he was seeing him for the first time. Ethan stood up calmly and said, "Mr. Robert, I'm here for Maureen, not for business." Then he turned to my parents and said, "For 18 months, you've dismissed me without even asking who I am. You judged me by my appearance and assumed I was beneath you. Maureen spends her days teaching kids who have been given up on. She's a hero in her own right, and you've made her feel like she's nothing." My mother started to stutter an apology, but Ethan didn't stop. "Every time Maureen tries to share her life with you, you make her feel like she's a disappointment. She's a wonderful person, and you've failed to see that." My father tried to defend himself, but Robert cut him off. "Henry, if Alexander marries into this family, he'll be part of this kind of treatment. I thought I was here to celebrate a happy occasion, but instead, I've witnessed a father humiliating his daughter." Lily started to cry, and I could see the fear in her eyes. She was afraid of losing the life she had built to please our parents. My mother reached out to me, but I stepped back. "You meant every word you said," I said. "You've made it clear for years that Lily is the daughter you're proud of, and I'm the one you're ashamed of. I'm done being your punching bag." Ethan picked up our coats, and we walked out. As we left, I could feel the eyes of the guests on us. In the elevator, the silence was a relief. It was clean, not empty. On the sidewalk, Ethan asked me if I was okay. I looked at him and said, "No, but for the first time, I think I'm free." 3 days later, Lily called me. Her voice was hoarse. "Alexander wants to postpone the wedding. His father told him he needs to think carefully about marrying into a family that treats people like this. I sat down at my kitchen table. I could hear the regret in Lily's voice. She went on to tell me that Robert had pulled out of a major real estate deal with my father, and several investors had followed suit. My father's business was in trouble, and my mother had lost her position on a prominent charity board. 2 days after that, my mother called. Her voice was hesitant. "Maureen, your father and I want to talk." I asked her, "Do you want to talk because you finally understand what you've done, or because you're paying the price?" She took a deep breath and said both. I went to my parents' house. The house looked the same as always, with its perfect gardens and expensive decor. But inside, everything had changed. My father looked older and less confident. We sat down and had a long conversation. My father said he had pushed me because he thought I could do better. I told him that respect based on achievement wasn't real love. My mother cried and admitted that she thought favoring Lily would motivate me. Lily finally admitted that she had been too afraid to stand up for me. At the end of the conversation, I told them that if they wanted a relationship with me, we needed to go to family therapy. Real therapy, not just for show. They all agreed. For the first time in a long time, I felt like there was a glimmer of hope for our family.